All right. Hope, would you call the meeting to order, please?
Yes. Meeting for May 17, 2011 is now called to order. Gelfarb?
Aye.
Mendocino? Nioris? Villanova?
Yes.
Carvin?
Yes. Councilman Mendocino, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Deputy Supervisor Villanova.
Heavenly Father, bless this assemblage. Grant us the wisdom to make our every decision fair-minded and in the best interest for all its residents.
Okay. Any comments on the minutes from the meeting of April 26th?
Motion to accept minutes?
Second?
Second.
Gelfarb?
Aye.
Mendocino? Villanova?
Yes.
Carvin?
Yes.
Can I abstain? I
Oh, that's all right.
Here, that's
I'll
right.
abstain.
No, that's right. I knew I'd
I know, I was thinking about
I seen you, yeah, exactly.
was in Texas.
David.
Oh,
I thought she was here.
Oh, well.
Okay,
okay, Hope, you want to read the departmental reports, please?
sure. Okay, deposited to the supervisor for the town clerks for the month of April, $2,254.60, compared to last year, $1,425.43. Deposited to the supervisor from the tax office for the month of April, $24,236,281.78. Deposited to the treasurer of the Village of Portchester, $65,702.57. Deposited to the treasurer of the Village of Rybrook, $18,751.90. A total of $24,320,736.25. Crawford?
Crawford Park, you have the report there, and you'll see that we have a slight fall-off in revenue. We're about $3,000 behind last year. We're also behind in the number of events. We don't think that it pertains to the price increases as of right now. We just think it's seasonal in nature. Remember also, we did close down for a week this past month to redo the floors. They look stunning, by the way, if you've been up there. And we're expecting that revenue will trend pretty much the same as it did last year.
Mr. Nowotnik, our expenditures down as well?
Well, it's a little too early to tell, frankly. Certainly we think our expenditures are under control, and we don't expect that we're going to exceed the budget amount that we have for Crawford Park, but it's too early to tell, really.
Well, what I'm actually trying to get from this is that if there are less events and there's less usage, there should, maybe I'm wrong, there should be less need to have staffing at off hours.
Well, we do have one event coordinator, and that seems to have been working out reasonably well. However, we're having issues there, and frankly, we need more. So we are going to advertise for perhaps 2 more event coordinators. We have been situations where we've had to call in our full-time staff to monitor a particular event that's going on. I see that getting worse as the season gets busier, as we get into May and June. So we are going to try and bring some other people on.
Very good.
Good. I just wanted to ask, now that we redid the floors, and this is probably the question for later, but are we still going to have Zumba up there?
As of right now, the commitment has been made to Zumba for this year, certainly. That's a policy that has not really been taken up yet. If I recall, a committee was formed. We have not been successful at setting up meetings with either Portchester or with the Village of Rybrook as of yet. And that was, again, I think, Michelle, you were on the committee as well as Gelfarb.
You know what, I want to add to Michelle's question. if the Zumba has a negative impact on the floor in the mansion, quite simply, why can't we ask that person who's renting from us to put down some kind of a mat or some kind of material that will lessen the impact and prolong the life of the floor? I mean, it's reasonable. You say, listen, people are supposed to come into the rental. You know, we talk about the fields need to be reseeded and whatever else takes place there to mitigate the impact. We've had this discussion. An average party that rents, the singers or whoever it may be, do not have impact on the floor. And if we're finding, like Councilwoman Mendocino mentioned, that there is impact on the floor because of their rental, then I think it's a fair request that that they have to provide something to mitigate the impact on that on the floor.
I don't disagree with you at all. I think, that, however, there are issues that transcend that specific item that relate to the Village of Rybrook Recreation Department as well as the Village of Portchester Recreation Department and treatment, and I think that's falling into the policy area.
Am I supposed to be setting up the meeting? Because if I am, I'll be more than happy to do that. If it's told me,
Well, actually, let's maybe take a step back. Where do we stand with we approved the Crawford Park policy for profit companies and endeavors, and we left it that we would follow up with not-for-profit municipalities. Where do we stand on that? It doesn't sound like we made much progress since that meeting.
That's correct.
We need to sort of, I would say, figure out amongst ourselves where we want to go with it, so that
Right.
we can present a coherent set of suggestions to the Village of Rybrook, the Village of Portchester.
I will be happy to try and meet with someone at the Village of Portchester, the Village of Rybrook this week, and I don't even Village of Portchester. I don't have a problem.
I think
with
you
that.
were designated Portchester and David's designated Rybrook, isn't that the way?
That's correct.
I believe so.
The real question becomes a chicken and egg situation. Who do you meet with first, and what are you looking to discuss?
Well, look, I maybe we take 2 minutes to discuss it now. I mean, I think that ultimately the whole idea is to make certain that the town of Rye is not the patsy, right? So ultimately, we're charging in comparable fashion as other municipalities. For example, we discovered at Rye Town Park, or Bishop, to his credit, discovered that we were the only municipality not charging for one of the triathlons. And I think Playland charged $15,000, was it, Bishop?
Well, last year they charged approximately $16,000, and the city of Rye charged $7,400 for police overtime, and Rye Town Park, which is actually the host of the event, charged $0. Again, this has historically been how that was handled, and we're in the same position with Crawford Park, where we have more or less maintained the historical treatment of nonprofit groups and municipal groups as it existed when we came into office. Now, since that time, we've adopted a new pricing policy and new alcohol policy for Crawford Park for paying customers, if you will, for paying people, private people, if you will. But we postponed, because of certain objections from the Village of Rybrook and from the Village of Portchester, we postponed looking at a nonprofit
All right,
policy.
so I'd like to, Mr. Arcaro, if you could work with Councilwoman Mendocino and Councilman Gelfarb, and I think what we want to do is first meet,
Okay.
see where there's a perceived asymmetry.
Meet amongst ourselves.
No, I think you and Mr. Arcaro to meet with the Village of Portchester, Mr. Arcaro and Mr. Gelfarb to meet with the Village of Rybrook. Let's see where there's a perceived asymmetry. Let's get their feedback, and then let maybe come back with some suggestions to the board or some proposals.
Sounds
Okay.
All right, so are you saying that it would not necessarily be necessary for you to be at the meetings?
Yeah, I don't think it's necessary to me to be. And I think I've been the one holding things up, so let me
No problem.
put my hand up, mea culpa, and say that,
Mr. Arcaro, please email me in the next day or two, and we'll start working on this forthwith.
wonderful. Excellent. Okay. Deputy Supervisor Villanova, is that?
Yeah, well, listen, that's part of it, but just to get back to, if we had a rental and someone was damaging the facility, and we know about it, we need to turn to the person who's renting, or whoever it may be, and say, time out. We're having some damage on the floor. Change your shoes. I don't know.
Well, it seems like, I don't understand the debate. There should be no, I don't understand, if somebody is using the facility and they're damaging the facility, it's a very straightforward decision. Stop damaging the facility.
Well, I'm not sure that they're damaging the facility per se. Zumba is an exercise class that is more or less like a dance class. All right, I know that they do wear sneakers in terms of going onto the floor. I think our damage to the floor was caused by other reasons. However, having said that, our new finish, for example, we've put what amounts to a gym floor finish on the floor at Crawford Park. Our feeling is that this is going to be a much more durable finish. Certainly, we can have the Zumba people, make sure that their people wear sneakers. I mean, they're not dancing in high heels. But at the same time, I think Councilman Mendocino's concern is that the constant jumping up and down, that the floor itself in the mansion was not really designed for a high activity level.
Okay, just come back to us with a report.
Sure.
Let's not speculate. We're not trying to throw anybody in the bus here, but let's
Right.
find out what the answer is.
Okay.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Comments from the public?
No, that's all right. I'm sorry. I represent a lot of people. I represent low-income people. I represent seniors, veterans, disabled, those that have lost their jobs. I'd like to know how many of you live in Portchester?
Goldie, every month. You know it's me.
No, I just want to know.
She just wants to know if anybody. Actually, I looked
just-
at a house in
I'm
Portchester
saying,
on Sunday.
how many
There's
people live in
Let me tell you, there's a beautiful home in Portchester
Okay.
up for sale, the castle. And
Okay.
I did look at it.
We have
Didn't
big-
quite suit all the needs, but it's actually a beautiful
Well,
home.
that's brand new stuff. We're talking about Portchester is an antique community. We just celebrated our 143rd birthday, and it's right over your head. May 14th, 1868 was our birthday, May 14th. Okay, we just celebrated that. We are an antique community, and we are a low-income to a middle-income community. Unfortunately, a lot of people have lost their jobs because we're still in a recession, depression. On Main Street, a lot of the stores are empty. And if you look at the sales the Journal News is the one I have, okay, you'll find that practically nothing in Portchester is being sold. And the reason being we have too much off the tax rolls between the nonprofit corporates and the municipal property. We have 11 group
Actually,
homes.
Can I ask a question about that, Mr. Markowitz?
Wait a minute, wait
Okay.
until I finish.
Okay, sure.
Okay? We have 11 group homes in the village of Portchester, all off the tax rolls. There is no other village in Westchester County that I know of that has 11 group homes all off the tax rolls. We have a big problem here. We have, oh God, including the GNS development, which was given special tax dispensation and handed practically the whole downtown area. Okay? We even are having trouble now with the bulkhead. which unfortunately GNS made an agreement with the County of Westchester for $840,000 a year for 20 years and handed them the whole waterfront property. And they're still asking for Portchester for money to fix that bulkhead. The taxpayers in Portchester cannot take the assessments that are there now. They have to come down more than anybody else. They can't go by sales. They have to take into consideration age, condition, and location, which they don't do. I'm sorry. They just don't do. There are big problems here. I also want you to know that St. Francis AME Zion Church, which is on Smith Street and Oak Street, in between there, the little church, just celebrated 163rd birthday of their being. We are an antique community. We are the oldest community. Not only that, all the things that are off the tax rolls, the surrounding communities use, but they don't pay. It doesn't come off their taxes. But we're getting killed. We're getting murdered by almost 50% being off the tax rolls. It doesn't make sense. And that's why the assessments have to come down, because many people cannot pay their taxes. Many people are struggling now to stay in their homes and in their apartments and everything else. We have very few things that we are basically a stick community. And I'm not talking about all the apartments that were put in. I'm not talking about Tower Hill and places like that were done in the 60s. I'm talking about everything that goes back into the 1800s that is still a problem. Our Portchester schools are overloaded because we have multiple crowding going on there. Did everybody vote today on the school budget?
Yeah.
I hope so, because it started at 7 and went on until 9. And that is a big problem. Your 350th birthday, I still have that, thank you, the disc, and I showed it at the King Street Nursing Home, and they loved it.
Oh, wonderful.
Okay? So we're still talking about your 350th birthday. But we have to get things corrected here. They are not being corrected, and that's what the problem is. People keep calling me, they keep stopping me, they say you're the only one that can get to the meetings because they're held at night, and we can't get out and come here. Our fuel taxes are killing us. We don't have enough money to pay our rent, our telephone bills, which are up, our gas bills, which are sky high, and we cannot come out, especially seniors and veterans, okay, and disabled people. So please take into consideration that Portchester is a needy community. It is not Rye Brook. It is not Rye City. It is not Greenwich. It is a very needy community, and it needs government's help at all levels. We're not getting it in the school taxes are going up. The village taxes are going up. Everything is going up, and people are screaming. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? We can't sell our homes. We can't sell our condos. We can't sell our co-ops. We can't sell anything because our taxes are too high. And there's too much off the tax rolls. So please, help. Help. That's what we need. Help.
Thank you, Goldie.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Question from Mitch.
Well, when we come to, just remind me when we talk, it comes to your comment time, Mr. Marcos, just questions about what's on and off the rolls, and is it differential? No, when we come to your question time. Other questions from the public?
Goldie, you're a pretty hard act to follow, but I'm going to try my best.
Well, people who are employed from out of town don't even know anything about Portchester. That's the biggest problem.
I filled out an application in February for part-time help in the town And I finally got an interview after 2 years, and I was called down to Oakland Beach, and the foreman of the park department was there, and his assistant, who was Mike Iantorno, was there also, who actually runs Crawford Park. And the foreman asked me if I was interested in getting rehired again. I says, yeah, I'd love to get rehired. So he says, well, the person that was there quit, and there's an opening in, we'd like to offer it to you. He said, we want to give it to somebody that knows the system and worked for the town for 12 years. So I'll get back to you. And then he asked Mike, who was at the interview, if he wanted to say anything, and he said no, he just, would be happy if I was put back on the job. So I waited a day, and I didn't hear from the foreman, so I took a ride up to see my friends at the park, and I was told that, I said, geez, I might have a good chance of getting hired again. And I was told by a couple of the workers that it's not going to happen because tomorrow somebody else is going to get hired. So I took a ride down the beach, and I spoke to the director of Rydtown Park. And I asked him what happened. He said that he had nothing to do with it, but he recommended that, I get hired. And the foreman, who's sitting right behind me, also recommended that I get hired. And he said that I have to bring your resume to the town rooms. I don't know who he gave it to, but I imagine it was Bishop. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to ask Bishop how he came to the conclusion of hiring this person who, number one, doesn't have one minute of experience with Crawford Park, and I worked there for 5 years, and he doesn't have 1 minute of experience of Oakland Beach, and I was there for 7 years, and I happened to work with Mike Iantorno for 7 years. So I'd like to know how he decided on not to hire me, because I know he was the one that did it, because I asked Freddie and I asked Frank, and they both recommended me, and I can't see how a confidential secretary
Okay.
would overrule Bishop.
Yeah, okay.
A confidential secretary could make a decision and overrule 3 of the top personnel that recommended me, and I wasn't hired. And there's an article in the paper here that states that you're looking for experience and knowledge, and people that live in the village will get preference. Well, I never got any preference, and I've been after this job for 2 years. And just to brief you on a few things, the person that was left Crawford Park, he lived in Brewster. And right now, on the payroll right now at Oakland Beach, you have a person that doesn't even live in New York State. He lives in Connecticut. So I'd like to ask how these 2 outsiders were hired before a person like myself. And I have another question after I get my answer from the first one. What is a person that is a resident of this town, what do I have to do to get hired when I have every qualification that is on this paper and more? What do I have to do? Maybe somebody can tell me.
Certainly.
And why I keep getting thrown under the bus all the time. If you want to throw me under the bus, then make sure that I get a free, a fair shot at the job, which I haven't been getting for 2 years. And I don't know why, because I know I was a good worker. Now we're probably going to hear from the attorney who keeps telling me that they don't have to tell me nothing. But I'm not asking why I didn't get the job. I want to know what the procedure was, what they do. Is the guy?
I'm not. There seem to be many questions in your
right.
comments. So I just wanted to, as you accurately pointed out, personnel matters are not discussed at public meetings. That the town has a policy. And candidly, I don't know if the hearsay that you've repeated about people recommending is accurate, and I don't think it's fair to imply that a decision was made in any other manner other than on the merits. There are many people who apply for these jobs, and I guess you were interviewed, as you indicated, so you were given every consideration. A decision was made to hire a number of people at the park. And this year, you may not have been one of them, but you're not the only one who is disappointed, I'm sure. But there is no public discussion about the hiring or the merits of individual employees. I think that's unfair to them, and it would be unfair to you. So if you have a question that is answerable in a public forum,
Okay, I have a
we'll
question.
answer it.
You keep saying the same thing to me every time I come here. Now, I'd like to ask you a question. Did you look at my resume?
No.
Oh, you didn't look at my resume.
I'm
So how can
not-
you sit there and tell me that I'm not really qualified?
I didn't say you weren't qualified.
There isn't.
I didn't say you weren't qualified. I said many people applied. Some were chosen, some were not.
Okay. No.
I didn't. I'm not. We're not addressing you individually or the merits of your application. All I'm saying is you were given every consideration. Your application was reviewed. You were given an interview, and unfortunately, you weren't selected. But other people weren't selected as well.
I'm not
You're
talking
not the
about-
only one. So all I'm saying is it's unfair to the town to put them in a position to discuss the merits of any individual employee in the hiring process.
I'm not putting anybody in under the bus like they put me under the bus.
No one's putting you under the bus. I
Well,
mean,
yes, they are.
No, they're
Yes,
not.
they are. Because there isn't one person that's on the payroll now that has my qualifications. If you can show me that anybody that you hire, and you keep saying that, well, there's a lot of people that didn't get hired. They didn't get hired because they don't have the qualifications. I happen to have the qualifications.
How do you know? Did you see all
Yeah.
the resumes?
Yes, I saw a lot
You
of
saw
them.
all the resumes.
I didn't see all of them.
Okay, so I don't think you could make that statement.
No. Well, how does he, as a confidential secretary?
Wait. No, sorry. You have absolutely you have no evidence that Mr. Nowotny made the decision. Mr. Nowotny.
Oh, I know he did.
Well, no, actually, we'll tell you he didn't make the decision.
Yeah, well then.
And I'll tell you that he did make the decision. And what I can tell you, Mr. Servey, I think you were invited for the interview. I don't think you responded. I think you were invited to interviews. I understand the situation. And the absolute total policy of the town is for the departmental heads to choose the person they believe is the most qualified for the job. Now, I wish you would have gotten it. I wish we could give jobs to all the people in the town, but it didn't happen. And there's no vendetta against you. There's nobody's out to get you. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, you were invited to participate. So unfortunately, it didn't happen for you. And I have a firm policy that my staff makes the hires.
Okay.
And the firm policy is on their estimation of the person most qualified. And that's what happened in this instance. Now, I appreciate your apply every year. I'm happy for you to apply every year. There's no vendetta against you. We've reduced the number of staff this year as well. At the park, we have a very rigorous budget at Rydtown Park. When that position came up at Crawford Park, I think we actually called you up rather than the other way around. So there's no vendetta against you, Mr.
I wasn't called up,
Servey.
by the way,
Well,
Mr. Supervisor. I wasn't called up to get an interview.
Were you contacted by somebody from the town?
No, I went to see Mr. Joffrey, and I just happened to see the foreman who was in there, and he says to me, can you make it Monday? And I said, sure, I can make it Monday.
So therefore you were informally invited by the town in any case.
And now I realize why I was interviewed, because Bishop knows that if I
I'm
was...
sorry, I'm
All right,
not going to allow you to cast aspersions on any of my employees without any evidence. Now, if you have some evidence, which is wholly false, because I know it's not the fact, about
You don't know that.
Mr. making the decision,
You
that's
don't
fine.
know that. You
I
don't
know
know
it for a
that.
fact.
No, you don't.
Yes, I do.
No, you don't.
Yes, I do.
I doubt it.
Okay.
And I'm just going to remind you of what you said about 7 months ago at a board meeting, and I was right at this microphone. You said, let me get this straight now,
Please,
because
yep.
I don't want to get you too excited.
Okay.
In previous years, there were a lot of horse manure deals made. That's what you said. Horse manure deals made in the town. Well, if this is not a horse manure deal, then I don't know what is. because this one stinks to high heaven, okay?